Now we'll do a question related to identification of the salt or salt and its identification. Okay. Page number 5. I will share this file also with you, so you can have, after the class I will share this file with you. Salt and identification question, page number 5. The question numbers are not in order, that's why I'm not saying the question number. A mixture of two compounds B and C were tested. Compound B is a water-soluble zinc salt where compound C is insoluble. So in the question they mention you have two salts. One is B, another one is C. B is a zinc salt. Zinc is there, and what else with zinc? You don't know. And C, you don't know anything about C. One measure of a mixture was heated gently and then strongly. One measure of a mixture was heated gently then strongly. Condensation at the top of the tube. And the gas is released, which is tested with a cobalt chloride paper. Actually, cobalt chloride paper is a test for check the presence of water. Cobalt chloride paper is a test to check presence of water. So if the water is present, then it will turn pink, from blue to pink. If water is not there, it will remain blue. So if I'm heating it and I observe that the gas is released or vapors are released, which will turn the cobalt chloride paper pink, from blue to pink. What I can say about this salt or a mixture? What I can conclude about the mixture, so what we call the scientific term, if water is present in the salt, we call that it contains water of crystallization. Not aqueous. And the term, there's a difference between aqueous salt and there's a difference between hydrated salt. Aqueous salt means salt is dissolved in water, but hydrated salt is in a solid state, but it traps few water molecules or it has some water molecules inside. But the state of the hydrated salt is solid, but it traps some of the water molecule. So when you supply heat energy, these molecules escape, water molecules escape, which will turn cobalt chloride paper from blue to pink. So a condensation which are formed at the test tube or the mouth of the test tube shows that this is a hydrated salt or this is a salt which contains water of crystallization. Test, the rest of the mixture was added to 25 cm of distilled water. The content of a flask was shaken and filtered. Test on filtrate. What will be filtrate, B or C? B is soluble, C is insoluble. So B will be filtrate because B is a soluble salt, soluble salts. What passes through the filter paper? The term water of crystallization means when you have a salt, some of the salts have tendency to absorb the moisture from the atmosphere. So when these salts absorb the moisture from the atmosphere, we call them as hydrated salt, or we call that they have water of crystallization. Water of crystallization means that the salt is there in a regular geometry but trap water molecules inside. We call these salts as hydrated salt, or we can say it has water of crystallization. So when I supply the heat energy, when we supply the heat energy, the water of crystallization lost or is removed from the salt. That's why there is a drop condensation at the top of the test tube, and cobalt chloride paper will turn pink because of presence of water. Is it clear? So salts have also tendency to absorb the moisture, and those salts which can absorb the moisture or water vapors or water droplet or water molecule are known as hydrated salts, or we say that water as a water of crystallization. Next is test on filtrate. Filtrate is compound B. We know it is zinc, but we don't know what else with zinc. Drops of sodium hydroxide were added to the first portion. If I add sodium hydroxide, what I will observe when there's a zinc salt? If I add sodium hydroxide, what I will observe if there's a zinc salt? Yeah, that's right. White PPT. And if we add an excess or too much sodium hydroxide, what we will observe? Precipitate dissolve or precipitate insoluble? If there is a zinc salt and you have white precipitate, what is the observation? You should check the table. I shared one table with you regarding the test. Better use that table to answer the question. So it's, you can see here, if it's a zinc salt with sodium hydroxide, it is white precipitate, and the precipitate dissolve to form a colorless solution. So here, precipitate dissolve and it will form a colorless solution. Next is to the second portion was repeated using aqueous ammonia instead of sodium hydroxide. So instead of sodium hydroxide, if you use aqueous ammonia, what we'll observe if aqueous ammonia is added to, so white precipitate, precipitate dissolve to form colorless solution. So first it will form white precipitate. And then the precipitate will dissolve and it will form a colorless solution. In part 3, to the third portion of a solution was added hydrochloric acid and barium nitrate. First, you have to identify what is this test for. Test for which ion? This is a test for which ion? When you add hydrochloric acid and followed by barium nitrate or barium chloride. Yeah, that's right. It is a test for sulfate ion. So that's correct. It's test for sulfate ion. And if it is giving a white precipitate, it confirmed that the sulfate is there. So this conclude that B was zinc. You already know it was zinc, but this test indicate that there's a sulfate ion because of white precipitate. So it is zinc sulfate. So compound B is basically a zinc sulfate salt. To the fourth portion, we add nitric acid followed by silver nitrate. What is this test for? Nitric acid followed by silver nitrate is a test for yeah, basically it's a test for halide ions, halogens. This is a test for halide ions such as chloride, bromide, or iodide. If it is giving a no visible change, so what it shows that there is no chloride or bromide or iodide. Because there is no visible change, so there is a test on residue. Residue is C. And when you add acid, you observe a gas is given off which turns lime water milky. So what is this substance C? Iodine is a molecule and iodide is an ion. When ion is there, we call iodide. When molecule is there, we call iodine. So basically a carbon dioxide gas is given off, and when you add an acid, if a substance gives carbon dioxide, means this substance is carbonate. So C is a carbonate, but we don't know what else with which metal is there, but we identify because we add acid and it give rapid effervescence which turn lime water milky. So it give an indication it's a carbonate. What does test A indicate? What does test A indicate? What does this test A indicates? It's a hydrated salt or contain water of crystallization. What conclusion you draw about compound B? So about compound B, we identify that it is zinc sulfate and it does not contain halide. Halide means halogen ions such as chloride, bromide, or iodide. There is no halide is there. I'll type this. It does not contain halide ion or does not contain halogen. That's the same thing. What does test C indicate? What does this test indicate? Yeah, it indicates carbon dioxide gas is given off and the substance is carbonate. The substance is carbonate which release carbon dioxide and turn lime water milky. Is it clear? Any doubt in this question? So I will share the salt identification files with you, and I will discuss. I told you every class I will discuss at least a question and revise the topic related to acid, alkali, and salt.